Welcome back to the morning show right on the Rising channel. It's now time for Global Business Update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Great to have you, Michael.
Morning.
Morning.
So investors didn't get many clues basically from the United States yesterday. They were trying to work out, and still are, about how bad inflation is, how good inflation is there, what the Fed's doing, and whether or not the biggest economy in the world is heading for recession. There are very few clues out there at the moment. And it's reflected in a very mixed performance as far as Asia Pacific is concerned. The one standout is the Nikkei, which was about the only one to rise. People there buying into healthcare and utilities. Now, you would normally say that those kind of assets are things that people go to in times of trouble. So there may be very sort of an aversion to risk taking place in Japan. China. Now, this is an important bit of corporate news as well, because China's JD.com, the chief executive there, Zhu Lei, has stepped down, in inverted commas, for personal reasons, as it says, and he's being replaced by the current chief financial officer. When that's going to happen, not exactly sure, but that's quite big news out of JD, and nothing wrong with their quarter results either, which were actually quite successful, just standing down apparently for personal reasons. We're going to turn our attention back to Japan and to SoftBank. I'm talking about this at some length with Reuters yesterday, but the bottom line is that what they were trying to invest in has not worked. This vision thing that they had has not worked at all. The loss is quite considerable, $32 billion worth of loss. They successfully, or rather their chief executive successfully identified Alibaba in its early days, and he made a personal fortune out of that, as did SoftBank, did very well as well. But in recent years, their look at various investments has just not worked out for them. Right, let's turn our attention to the United States and those PPI figures yesterday. The Dow in normal trade was down about 300 points. Disney didn't delight people. Again, Rotis and I talked about this yesterday. 8% drop in the shares after the bell. What they had been suffering from was extra streaming costs. I think they passed those on. I feel as that, and people are still going to the theme parks as well. However, what Disney was complaining about was general growth in revenue, and investors didn't like that a great deal. Let's talk about Jamie Dimon. Now, again, he seems to be the CEO of JP Morgan, appears to be in the news quite a lot. What he's actually saying right now is that this regional banking crisis that Rufai and I have been talking about, it seems for a long time now, has not gone away, in as much as, yes, it may be being contained, but there's still what Dimon described as a sort of sense of panic in investors' minds, and that's a pretty dangerous thing. Elon Musk, again, they're now almost the second richest person in the world, I think it's probably fair to say, is stepping down as CEO of Twitter, and as yet unnamed woman is going to take over his role as CEO. Tesla shares were up on this because a lot of Tesla shareholders have been thinking that since his purchase of Twitter and all the jollifications that have been going on there are actually taking his mind off running Tesla. And Tesla shares are up about 4% on that news yesterday. He will keep an eye, he says, on Twitter, but he's not going to keep a day-to-day role as CEO. We're going to talk now about Turkey, which has elections this weekend. It has been attracting a lot of interest from Gulf states, particularly in terms of direct foreign investment and also secondary kind of investment as well, particularly from Qatar, which increased its investment in the country by 500% between 2016 and 2019. Also, UAE and Saudis are interested as well. Now, the elections, as I said, this weekend, and of course, 50,000 people dead after that really tragic earthquake, earthquakes in February. That means a lot of people have been displaced. So the authorities there are trying to get people to their polling stations, their local polling stations, but a lot of people are just worried about the fact of their own lives rather than worried about voting, which begins on Sunday. The EU, now here's an important one as well. It looks like northern France, which used to be a very big coal mining area of France. Of course, that that business has now almost disappeared, has attracted Macron has attracted a Taiwanese battery maker, Logium. It's a 5.3 billion euro investment in the area. It will create jobs. It's around Dunkirk. It's a very, very important thing. And for him, good political news in as much as this is bringing jobs to an area which people thought, a lot of people had forgotten, northern France. If you happen to drive through it, you'll see it looks almost deserted right now. Let's hope that changes. UK Bank of England, now being a very, very hostile press conference yesterday, feeling as though they've somehow got behind the curve. It may be that interest rates have to rise to 5% in the UK. That is very, very dangerous ground. I think most people agree as well. And once again, the bank's forecasts are wrong. UK GDP grew in the first quarter of the year, the first 3 months of the year, not by much, but it did grow. And this recession that they were forecasting doesn't look like it's happening right now. It's on the margins, certainly, but as far as statistics are concerned, that 0.1 increase is enough to say no recession so far. Thus, the Bank of England, once again, wrong in its forecasts. And I think the governor, there he is, Andrew Bailey, will come under a lot of pressure to rethink the bank's role, because it certainly seems to be behind the curve. I'm going to leave you with three lots of commodities. First of all, oil, which clearly the feel about the oil markets is, how on earth is OPEC Plus going to put up with this present oil price? It feels when it gets down to 70 for Brent, then it feels that OPEC Plus will probably take some kind of action. Gold, investors there are still mystified as to where inflation is going, as we all are, and so that's having a negative effect on the price. But don't rule out it possibly busting through to a record high of above $2,100, but it's still not quite sure where it's going. And Bitcoin, I said I'd mention cryptos. Bitcoin, about 27,000 now, and the reason for that is there's a feeling that US regulators have only just started looking at the crypto markets, particularly the crypto creation market. They suspect more crackdowns are to come, and that's keeping a lid on crypto prices as we speak. That is the global view.
I would like to understand this dichotomy between the banks and the Bank of England now, because when you look at the projections, everything looks to be falling apart. More interest rate rises, but the blowback on the effect of the people is sad. It's just as if the Bank of England, putting the English people in the middle, playing them, making life harder for them with this very nefarious decisions they make. It's like a nefarious needle needling the British people at the expense of this economic jargons that they keep banning around. What is happening?
Well, I voiced my personal criticism of the Bank of England fairly, I hope, and I think that's certainly reflecting, but it doesn't matter about me. But reflects what the market is thinking right now. I think everybody applauded the fact that the Bank of England got its independence when Labour came into power in 1997, and everybody thought that was a great idea. But it does seem, the decision making is not mysterious. It's perfectly open. The problem is it right or wrong? That's the question. Not whether it's opaque or not. It's a question of whether they're right or wrong. And so far they have been consistently wrong about this current crisis. Not only that, but last week I was saying to you, because I was reflecting what was going on, that it looks like inflation will be falling fairly sharply because of energy costs coming out of the index in the later part of the year. It doesn't now look as though that's going to happen. It looks as though interest rates will be 5% by the end of the year. And there was a very, very spiky exchange yesterday at the Bank of England press conference after this. And I think you will find a lot of people, there'll be a lot of comment in the newspapers over here over the weekend, and maybe internationally as well, about whether the Bank of England really, is predicting the economy correctly. I don't think it is. And secondly, whether it's got a handle on inflation. It can just raise interest rates, and that will eventually have the effect. But as we've often said, and as we keep saying, Rafai, as we swap these views, there is no point in doing that if it strangles an economy.
All right, Michael, let me talk about Elon Musk and his announcement about a potential new CEO for Twitter. A number of people have said, well, he's referred to the new CEO as a she, so perhaps we'll see the first female Twitter CEO. And beyond that, there's speculations as to who would be primed for this job. Some people are perhaps wondering if it might be NBC Universal's Linda Tucarino. Do you have any indications at all as to who could possibly take on in 6 weeks?
I don't envy her, whoever it is, because I wouldn't like to work for Elon Musk. That's just a personal thing. I like to know exactly where a company is going and what's expected. As a sort of middle-ranking executive within a company, you need to know that. So far, Twitter has been all over the place, number one. Number two, what is the business model? I don't know what that is. That's what the CEO presumably has to decide as well, in cooperation with the CFO. Musk says he's taking a back seat. I don't think he is, but, that's what he's saying. And also Tesla shareholders are rejoicing in the fact that maybe his concentration will now descend upon Tesla rather than messing about with messing about Twitter. And I use messing about not as a derogatory kind of thing. I mean, that's what he's done. He's been there. He's changed the business model a number of times. It's been the blue tick fiasco and so on. Jack Dorsey is coming along and saying, hang on, what about my offering? So there are a lot of rivals, a lot of regulatory problems. I don't envy her the job at all. And to answer your question, no, I don't. I have no indication of who it might be. But, that's what we term in the sports world here as a hospital pass.
Well, he says he's taking a back seat, but he said he'll stay on as executive chairman and chief technological officer or technology officer. So I don't know how much of a back seat that would be. Do you think he would really hands off completely on, with Twitter?
I don't think he would have any hands off whatsoever. As far as I can work out, Elon Musk does not do hands off. Here's a man who stays awake most of the day and the night, fiddling around with things, fiddling around with companies. He's a micromanager. He's not going to stand back. That's why I don't envy her the job.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
All right, we'll go for business updates on the African continent. Rotus is here. Rotus, they're too seeing you. I'm happy.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo. Good to see you.
I just have to reiterate that.
Good morning, Rotus.
Good to see you guys.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Oil and gas. OPEC released their monthly oil and gas report yesterday, monthly oil market report, and basically showing that Nigeria's oil production has fallen. Now, what OPEC does is to look at basically Purchasing Managers Index, a PMI, which is a survey that is sent out to businesses to find out, okay, so if Ayo is an SME, Rufai is an SME, they'll say, Ayo, what are your inventory levels looking like? Rufai, what are your employment levels looking like? And then they will use that to gauge oil demand. So the PMI has a 50-point threshold. If you're above 50, you're expanding. If you're below 50, you're contracting. During the pandemic, for instance, businesses were, shut down, and so PMIs were really, really low. So this is part of what they do. But it's very interesting. If you look at, we really need to talk about how far we're going compared to our peers, yeah? So there's a couple quotes where OPEC looked at, for instance, Saudi Arabia. Look at this here. They said this is Saudi Arabia. The non-oil sector is expected to play a predominant role in driving growth this year in Saudi Arabia, which is an oil and gas giant. The government continues to implement diversification policies aimed at boosting the non-oil sector. Then take a look at this. This is OPEC talking about Saudi Arabia. Recently, 4 special economic zones were launched, offering incentives to attract foreign investment into manufacturing, cloud computing, medical technology, and maritime sectors. Saudi Arabia has been using petrodollars, oil dollars, to boost. We talked about Qatar when they hosted the World Cup last year. Who owns Manchester City? It's oil and gas money from the Middle East. Who owns PSG? It's oil and gas money from the Middle East. There's an electric car company, I forget the name, I think it's Laidu or Lainu. Their main majority shareholder is Saudi Arabia. So they are making key investments around the world. They are building a smart city with their oil money. A technological, utopia is what they're building. There's a video, I forgot to bring it up here. Maybe I'll share it on Monday. Emirates, their first class which is run by the UAE. They have showers now. There's an African-American comedian. His tweet or Instagram video went viral. He went to take a shower in first class in Emirates. I mean, this is what oil money has done for the Middle East, right? With what they're doing now. Now let's go to
Nigeria Air would have.
Nigeria Air hasn't even taken off yet. Nigeria Air has issues.
And by the way, Emirates made money without being in Nigeria.
They swung back to a $3 billion profit this year.
Yeah. Despite not being here.
They're doing quote unquote yanga, if excuse my international audience. Yeah, for us, where they've banned us from getting visas, right?
Yeah.
Right? You know, so.
No, but to be fair, to balance it, they do miss our business. That's the truth. I say
they
that.
miss our business.
Yes, they do.
You
I
think?
say that.
Ayo,
Let me land.
Nigeria is
you know
not
what
in
I'm
the
saying
top
that
10 visitors to the
Yes,
UAE.
but they miss our business.
You think so?
Yes,
How?
any businessman does not want to lose a penny. Doesn't want to lose
No,
a
but they
dollar.
made profits.
Yes, they did. It doesn't. But their profits can be
More if Nigeria was part of it.
I mean, granted argument.
Yes, the reason I'm saying that is because.
But what they did is they did
the reason I'm saying that is because we have to give credit to the Nigerian market. We cannot discredit it or displace it and say that it doesn't matter if we are not part of their market, so they still made profits. I say this because remember I went for a conference earlier this year,
and you needed a special
thing to get in, right? They mentioned that their business community actually testified to the fact that they felt the impact of that weekend.
Right.
They did, because we had over about 400, and kudos to Mrs. Bukan Woshika and the International Women Leadership Conference, because it was good business for them. It was impactful for businesses, because the Gold Souk mentioned that. The malls mentioned that. So we cannot say that, yes, they made profits, but it could be better profits is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that.
What's the essence of making profit when your money's trapped?
Thank you, Rufai. I mean, that is it. You know, they cannot.
No coming back from that.
They cannot repatriate their money out of Nigeria.
So touch that. They can't get it out. For Nigeria is that we are a valuable market to international.
I agree.
But value without taking your cash out is valueless.
It's a problem. Well done. Okay, so now let's look at the quotes from OPEC on Nigeria. Read this now. Nigeria's economy faced challenges in gaining momentum, with business activity and consumer spending remaining subdued, in addition to high input cost inflation and lower employment levels compared with the previous year. Then, on an optimistic note, they said, however, recent leading indicators suggest that the economy may recover in the coming months. April's Stanbic IBTC Bank Nigeria PMI recovered strongly to 53.8 compared with 42.3 in March, indicating a potential near-term recovery. And they use Stanbic IBTC because the CBN used to put out PMIs. For some reason, they stopped. So they're using Stanbic IBTC's numbers now. Look at oil production for OPEC, and this is where you see the drop in April. So 2021, we did 1.3 million barrels per day. 2022, 100,000 barrel drop to 1.2. First quarter of this year, January through March, 1.3. April, 1.1. Nigeria historically should be doing above 2 million barrels per day, 2.1, 2.2. But, vandalism, oil theft, aging infrastructure, so on as force majeures left and right is where, and this is, you know that oil is what we depend on for foreign exchange and government revenues. Now, I have to bring in the president-elect in here because in his manifesto, he has plans for oil production goals. He says he wants to get us to 2.6 million barrels per day by the end of his first term. If he is re-elected, his second term will end in 2031. He wants to get us to 4 million barrels per day. Now, it has to be said, 4 million barrels per day is not even half of what Saudi Arabia does. And you have to think about this. If this is 2030, where we're supposed to be meeting net zero goals and so on and so forth, and this is
and electric cars are supposed to be very dominant.
Thank you.
By that time, some countries should be exiting using fossil fuel cars.
You've taken my point. That's the point. But where will other countries be by the time Nigeria is just getting to? That is if he can get us to 4 million barrels per day, when historically we've done 2 million. So you can see what this present administration. Oil production fell under them. Oil theft was rampant. So now he has to now start from behind to get us just to 2.6 million barrels by 2027 and 4 million by 2030. That is if he even is able to put all our ducks in a row and get us there. All right, still on the same theme of leaving us behind. I don't know. I think I'm going to add a segment called Dare to Dream. Yeah, you guys remember Frank Sinatra's "Come Fly with Me"?
Yeah,
you remember?
Let's fly away.
Come fly with me, let's float down to Peru in Llama land, there's a one-man band, and he'll toot his flute for you. Come fly with me, let's take off in the blue.
Come fly
Okay, yeah.
with me, let's fly,
Now,
let's
see, this
fly.
is the whole point about where we could be, right? And the things we talk about here versus other clients. X-Turismo is one of many companies that have come up with an actual flying taxi, a flying car. These things used to be in sci-fi movies, right? They're in Japan. It's $500,000. Take a look at this. Amazing stuff. Okay, you're laughing as a Nigerian. Do you see that? Do you see that?
You know, it's always the Liverpool go block us.
Our gallery, are hilarious guys in our gallery. But the average, this is in Japan, right?
Yeah.
This came out, I think it was March or last month, right?
Yeah.
$500,000. It's out there, and of course there has to be aviation protocols and all those other things. But if you are a university student in Japan, you are thinking of how to design flying vehicles in the future. If you are a university student in Nigeria, there's your ASU strike you have to deal with. And, so again, I really need to emphasize for our viewers and for everybody, we are being left behind. The conversations, the technology, what they're doing, things that you saw in movies are now real. Meanwhile, we're still here talking about whether to get lights or oil production. So anyway, that's our business update.
Rotus, I mean, somebody sent me something very painful yesterday, comparing a child born in Nigeria to a child born in other parts of the world. At first, the child born in Nigeria will be left behind because his life expectancy will be about 55 thereabout. The life expectancy of a child, of a contemporary born in Japan, would be well into
like
the
80s, yeah, or 90s. They live
that
somewhere
child
into
will have
100.
access to hygiene, portable drinking water. There's going to be a social sector, social insurance for him. In Nigeria, you've got nothing. You have to be your own government. You have to even provide your own water. I have a very bad habit. And I think it's because what Nigeria has done to my mentality. Anytime I go to the UK, I guess the first thing I do.
What do you do?
The first thing I do is to go open the tap to be able to drink water.
Yeah, drinking tap water.
You know, because it's become a rarity in Nigeria that government supplied tap water, you hardly have it any longer. And I remember growing up still drinking tap water in this country. So I just hope our leaders are able to introspect. Rotus, there are some quick wins. We might not be able to build this flying taxi now. But Rotus, take for instance, and I think this new administration should see it and probably learn. What do we all do in common in this country? We speak good English.
Yep.
An average person on the road speaks good English. How about call centers? How about service sector?
India dominates call centers.
How about
logistics?
India has taken over call centers.
How about logistics? Almost
Job
all of us
creation
speak
for
clear, and our English is even clearer.
But Rufai, don't you need lights for the call center?
You need light for it.
You need power.
When we talk, people say, "Oh, you have no right to talk." We don't even produce enough power. We're projecting to produce 40,000 megawatts in how many years down the road?
That they've been doing that one,
And we've been
projecting
projecting
that
that
since forever.
And guess what? South Africa has complained they don't have power. They're already doing 33,000 megawatts. So we can introspect. We've got coal. You know what we just need, Rotus, is a leader that has a
Leadership,
thinking
that is
cap. And that's what we've
forward-thinking.
lacked. But you see, the kind of leaders we've always had are people that want to state capture paraphernalia of government, steal money for them and their cronies that they'll never be able to spend in their lifetime and spoil their children silly.
And send them overseas to Japan and UK to go and enjoy those flying cars.
We need a leader that can just harness resource.
Yeah.
Because this country is blessed, and is the best kept secret in the world. And I know this country will turn a leaf for good.
Yeah.
But we need to get leadership right. And that's why, please, elections are no joke. When people make some very, very phony arguments, God bless your heart, but please save this country.
Well, I was going to ask a few questions,
Yeah.
but we're almost out of time. But the question I was going to ask you was with regards to the oil production.
Yeah.
I asked because, Rotus, OPEC has said we've fallen in oil production in April 2023, and prior to this, we've had a number of conversations around the efforts to increase oil production. The significance of this is obviously revenue for FX for the country.
Yeah.
We've talked about the fact that I was quoting the DG of the Budget Office when he was training the new legislative officers that we have a revenue challenge, and what we're looking to do is to shore up our revenue. When we hear stories like this, it is absolutely discouraging. But beyond that what I would have liked to ask you is all the efforts that have been made to increase oil production.
Right.
Security, we had assurances by, NNPCL, we're going to do this. What happened to that? The money spent to ensure that we increase oil production, this is our scorecard, and we have failed yet again. So where is that money going to? What's the explanation for this? And the final thing I was going to ask you was on Elon Musk, and he saying that he was going to leave Twitter. We discussed this with Michael.
Oh, wait.
Do you have an idea as to who would be the next?
We do. Do we have that picture? There's a meme floating around.
Really?
There it is. That's the meme. So the meme is basically saying that Elon Musk is so controlling that he's the one that's going to be the female CEO when he takes over.
I would be surprised.
So,
Thank you so much, Otis, for your time.
Probably could get AI to run Twitter.